Slimes, demons, dragons, God? I have always been obsessed with monsters. Like, is there anything cooler than a massive giant thing covered in horns and spikes and claws? But that kind of got me thinking recently, who's actually the biggest anime monster out there? And who's the strongest? So today, I wanted to compare all of these monsters here, from weak tiny blobs to behemoths larger than the moon itself, and then suddenly back to tiny blobs again that are actually so broken that they can destroy a whole galaxy by, I guess, sneezing too hard. And so today we're looking at all of them in terms of power and size, starting in the bottom left corner with the smallest and weakest monster of them all, Slimes. The littlest of the little guys. I mean, you know him, you love him, and whether they're weak opponents in the Dragon Quest manga or they're getting in the way of every single isekai protagonist, these guys are just sadly the bottom of the monster food chain, with one notable exception, as you can guess, much later in this video. And so immediately a nice step up from them are goblins here, as featured in Goblin Slayer, as well as showing up in practically, again, every isekai and fantasy setting ever. Now usually they're not good for much but racking up those XP points, but next for a monster that you'll be sure to recognize, because coming to us straight from the most profitable media franchise of all time is our electric mouse, Pikachu. This pocket monster is an absolute icon, but as anyone who's actually tried to use one in their own Pokemon team knows, his battle skills usually leave a lot to be desired, if it's not Ash's, I guess. Please, someone get this guy a Thunderstone ASAP. I mean, Ash is kind of a second-rate trainer, but I do know you should always evolve this mouse. And yeah, I mean, Pikachu is adorable, but how about a real monster? Johann Lieber. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not a monster Manu, that's just a dude, but Johann is actually the reason that his series is called Monsters in the first place. Because what you don't see is that on the outside he might look nice and lovely, but inside he's as evil as they come. Admittedly, he might not totally count for this list, but hey, I just can't resist the urge to tell you guys to watch Monster at every possible opportunity, because that series honestly just rules. Helsing's Alucard is quite the monster himself, I think, but let's get a little bit more beastly with his pet doggo, Baskerville. This hellhound that's a familiar to Helsing's vampire protagonist feeds on a balanced diet of Alucard's enemies. Because why settle for Purina brand dog food when you can just chomp down on nutritious people instead, which is so much better? But why eat people at all when you can simply take over their bodies instead? These mysterious monsters suddenly showed up on Earth to ruin like everyone's day. The larval forms drill right into the human body and move into their brain, taking control of their host. And then what ensues next, I guess I can only describe as some insane Cronenberg-style body horror, as they contort the human bodies into grotesque shapes as they hunt down and feed on other victims. Oh, wait, I guess we are still eating people after all. My bad, okay, I messed that one up. And you better get used to these monsters eating a lot of people, because, well, that's like most of this video. And that's definitely the case for the terraformers. After a Mars colonization attempt has gone horribly wrong, these super powerful mutant cockroaches threaten all of humanity. They're just born with this innate hatred of humans and don't hesitate to inflict like maximum violence on any person they see. And also known for their insatiable thirst for violence and human blood are the demons from Demon Slayer. These creatures are absolutely deadly. They have several times the strength and speed of a regular human. Now, of course, the strongest among them are on a completely different level than the standard demons here. In fact, I do have a feeling I might have put a particular demon a little bit later on this list. And moreover, they do have insane regenerative abilities that mean they can only be killed by the sun or the Demon Slayer Core's Nichirin swords. But let me tell you, such simple weaknesses are not shared by the Yoma from Claymore. Now, these flesh-eating parasitic creatures can soak up all the race they want as they seamlessly blend into society in the bodies of their human hosts. Only the Claymores can actually identify these shapeshifters and stop them from making a meal out of all the unsuspecting people. But with that being said, you will never guess what the ghouls from Tokyo Ghoul like to eat. Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's right. It's also people. Well, and other ghouls actually. So, I mean, at least these cannibals don't discriminate, which is good. Now, these ghouls can also pass as regular humans, but also have unique supernatural abilities on top of super speed, strength, durability, and also great regeneration. Their weakness though I love, which is pretty unique among their monstrous peers. They'll die if you force feed them some regular normal food, which makes them the first monster on this list that can be taken out by, I guess, something like a Happy Meal. Then again though, how many people has McDonald's killed? But that's a different video. Now, the Barbarois from Vampire Hunter D are a community of mutants and demons that have been indebted to Dracula for many generations, with the elder of their village having lived for, get this, over 10,000 years. Their supernatural powers, like being able to transform and manipulate shadows, make them quite formidable monstrous opponents. But I would argue personally not as formidable as the Chimera Ants, who are the antagonists of Hunter x Hunter's most famous arc. Now, we've already had some big human-shaped bugs on this list before, but the cockroaches from Terraformers don't stand a chance against these crazy creatures that came from the legendary Dark Continents. These Chimera Ants have insane appetites, devouring any living thing that they can find, including humans, of course. And this is kind of where the Chimera part comes in, because the offspring of the Chimera Ant Queen take on traits of the other creatures that they have consumed, which results in them resembling all types of animals and creatures and even gaining human intellect. But of course, the strongest of the Chimera Ants are on a whole other power level, so this is not gonna be the last we'll see of the Chimera Ants in this video either. However, moving on, even more terrifying than the average Chimera Ant though are the ants from Solo Leveling, the S-level threats that are totally not a rip-off of the Chimera Ants. No, not at all. Now, these creatures' extreme rate of evolution means that even a party of S-rank hunters from Korea and Japan weren't able to contend with the insane might of these monsters, at least until Sung Jin-woo came to bail them all out. And wow, okay, this is gonna blow your minds. This next entry does somehow not eat people. He's on the human side. In a world of constant risk of kaiju attacks, Kafka Hibino gained the power to transform into a kaiju himself, specifically kaiju number 8. Now, this beastly transformation gives him massive strength, speed, and the power to release energy roars, allowing him to fight giant monsters on equal footing. Actually, I'm lying, he's probably way stronger than most of them. And the last of the little guy tiers also fights on the human side, or at least on Kagome's side, who is Inuyasha. Let me tell you, this dog demon is surprisingly crazy powerful. He can slice opponents to ribbons with his claws and sword skills, and his demonic yokai transformation unleashes even more insane strength and powers. And honestly, for the longest time, I thought this was a girl. It kind of was a shock when I found out that that's actually a dude. But now I think let's scale up in size and power. It's time to head to the next tier, the absolute units. Now, these guys are what really got me hype when they showed up first when I was getting into anime. Like, how is the little hero guy gonna beat any of these guys? Is he gonna pilot a giant robot or just cut him in half with his sword anyways? Well, first up we have the Bunny, one of the Elder Barons from Blood Sea. Now, this is actually the last of the monstrous antagonists that appear in the series, and the most deadly as well. By transforming its arms into blades or bludgeons, they inflict massive carnage on their enemies. And while the Bunny, like so many others on this list, has a real taste for human flesh, our next absolute unit has a taste for just about everything. Okay, No Face here is one of the most recognizable characters out of all of Studio Ghibli's films. This lonely spirit here is one of the bathhouse visitors in the classic Spirited Away, my personal favorite Ghibli movie, and takes on the emotions and personality traits of those it consumes. No Face over here is also extravagantly wealthy due to its ability to transform mud and other objects into actual gold, and alchemists absolutely hate this dude. And actually, you know what? While we're here, let's just do a back-to-back Studio Ghibli double feature with my second favorite show, because the next monster is Nago from Princess Mononoke. This demonic boar god rampages as it tries to protect its own domain from the humans of Irontown, who are defiling the nature there with their industry. Man, I love Studio Ghibli. Maybe I should just do a big Studio Ghibli ranking one of these days. Anyways, up next is Falin from Delicious in Dungeon, or in Japanese, Dungeon Meshi, also a favorite. And when she's eaten by a dragon, she sets off the whole story as her brother Laios and the rest of the adventuring party try to rescue her from the dungeon. Unfortunately, the crew is in for a quite rude surprise after Falin has been transformed into a monstrous chimera by the magician Thistle, combining her human form with the red dragon as well as some other mythical creatures. The result is, yeah, this. A bit disturbing. Now, sticking to the fantasy setting, Nosferatu Zod is a beast of an apostle. By summoning the God Hand, he traded his own humanity in exchange for some truly insane power. In the 300 years since his transformation, he's just traveled from battlefield to battlefield, slaughtering thousands in his search for worthy opponents, before eventually swearing loyalty to Griffith over here. Though, despite being an actual match for characters like Guts and the Skull Knight, he is far from the most powerful monster in Berserk, and I'm actually really excited to talk about the most terrifying ones of all coming up soon. But the next absolute unit are the massive danger beasts who threaten the world of Akame ga Kill. Now, their appearances are pretty much modeled after giant animals like giant apes, dinosaurs, and dragons, with some of them gaining somewhat anthropomorphic features, meaning they look like humans. Now, their animal instincts kind of lead them to crush and chomp down on any human who enters their territory, and entire clans in Akame ga Kill are dedicated to hunting one of them down. Meanwhile, our next entry is less so hunted down though, instead they do most of the hunting themselves. There are really few more iconic anime monsters, I think, than the Titans from Attack on Titan. Because these giant, grotesque humanoids with like the creepiest smiles ever drawn, like oof, they threaten all life inside of the walls. And even though they're solar powered and don't need to eat to survive, there is nothing that they love more than devouring people somehow. Meanwhile, there are a whole lot of monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but one of the coolest and obviously most famous of all time just has to be Seto Kaiba's signature card, the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Oh wait, that brings me back to like my 8-year-old elementary school self. Oh, good memories. Now, this guy summoned by combining 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons into one single monster, which takes the form of a Blue Eyes White Dragon, but with 3 fearsome heads. And with some absolutely insane attack power, any duelist hates to see this guy show up on the other side of the battlefield. Now, of course, I do know the perfect way to counter a Blue Eyes. I mean, you simply steal the card from an elderly person and then rip it up so that it can't be used against you. Pretty easy counter strategy. But interestingly enough, even this 3-headed monstrosity is somehow still tiny compared to all of the monsters in our next tier, introducing the, I'm gonna call this the super massive mega monsters, because these guys, let me tell you, are next level. Mind-blowingly big. Inconceivably huge, but who will take the title of the biggest of all? And is that character even the strongest monster out there? Spoiler alert, it's not. But we're starting with the Menos Grande from Bleach, that literally have big in their names, just I guess in Spanish or Italian. And this class of hollows is formed through hundreds of regular hollows fusing together. So kind of like the Blue Eyes White Dragon, just I guess same but different. Now, these titanic monsters rip holes in the fabric of reality themselves as they travel between Hueco Mundo and the human world, and they utilize giant blasts to obliterate their opponents. Meanwhile, in the other big shonen universe, in the oceans of One Piece, lurk giant leviathans called Sea Kings. And if a crew is unlucky enough to meet one of these truly gargantuan serpents, their ship might just be swallowed whole. Like, it's not even, it's like a little grain of sand or something for that monster. That's how big they are. In fact, they're responsible for making it nearly impossible to escape or enter the Grand Line, since they densely populate the calm belt that surrounds this special piece of ocean in One Piece. And next up, there's yet another sea creature, though this one flies through the sky instead of living underwater for whatever reason. It's the white whale, one of the great mob beasts from Re:Zero. This thing was created by Daphne, the Witch of Gluttony, and has the power to erase those captured in its mist from the memories of other people. This thing has plagued the world for centuries until a coalition put together by Natsuki Subaru was finally able to slay it. Also, man, what is it about anime and escalating sea creatures to like just insane gargantuan proportions? Because the next entry is the Spirit Tortoise, one of the guardian beasts from the Rising of the Shield Hero, and it uses powerful gravity magic to leave its opponents helpless as it crushes them underneath its immense weight. I've always felt like you could make an argument that with that size, do you need gravity magic? But anyways, like, this mountain-sized monster houses an entire city on its back and won't be the last monster to do so on this list either. Okay, but how about a classic kaiju now? Godzilla Earth from the anime film Godzilla, Planet of Monsters is one of this giant lizard's largest incarnations, towering at an impressive 300 meters tall. In this version of Godzilla, he's quite literally the king of monsters, having ruled over the Earth as its dominant life form for 20,000 years. So yeah, no worries, I would never make a list like this with forgetting one of the most iconic anime cinematic monsters of all time. But next up are the beasts of the Dark Continent from Hunter x Hunter. Now let me just tell you, there's not that much we know. They're some of the most mysterious on this entire list because they haven't actually appeared in the series properly yet, and we don't know if there ever will, because after the Chimera Ant arc, the series author Togashi revealed that the entire known world of Hunter x Hunter actually just exists inside of a really big lake, which is surrounded by a massive landmass known as the Dark Continent, which is filled with forces beyond comprehension, such as the subscribe button, which you can press right here to see even more Tanuki Tale videos. Now, the few illustrations that we do get of the Dark Continent feature these like Goliath monsters that dwarf anything else known in the series. Of course, one Hunter x Hunter monster that plenty is known about is still coming up in this video. But some monsters we do have a lot more solid information on, which are the 8 kings from Toriko. If you've never seen this show, you should, but to break it down, each of these serve as the king of a different animal species and rule over the 8 continents of the gourmet world. Beasts like the Horse King Heracles and the Wolf King Guinness make truly fearsome opponents, but none are as massive and monstrous as the unnamed Dragon King. Of course, the Dragon King from Toriko isn't nearly as iconic as Shenron from Dragon Ball, probably taking the title for the most famous dragon in all of anime. I'm not sure if you'd agree with that, I think so. Shenron is the legendary creature that's summoned by bringing all of the Dragon Balls together. Go gather those Dragon Balls with your homies. Now, he will grant the one who summoned him any wish that's within his power to fulfill, leading to just about every major character in the series who ever dies to just come right back to fight in yet another tournament arc. Even though Shenron is pretty iconic, there are still actually many more powerful Dragon Ball monsters coming up later in this video. But first, some more of the most iconic monsters in anime have to be the tailed beasts from Naruto. Kurama, the 9-tailed fox here that lives inside of Naruto, is the most famous out of all of them, but the most powerful one is actually the ugly 10-tails, look at this thing, which is formed by combining all of the other 9-tailed beasts together. The 10-tails revival was absolutely crucial for Madara's master plan, and the 10-tails was said to be the source of all the world chakra, originally created by Kaguya Otsutsuki, the true final villain of the series, at least until Boruto happened anyways. But what about some monsters that can send you into an absolute existential crisis? I mean, we all love those, right? Don't we? I love them. The angels from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Okay, 15 years after the second impact, these monsters began appearing and wreaking havoc on the Earth. The goal of Nerve and EVA pilots is to stop these monsters who take strange forms ranging from vaguely humanoid to just a sphere that makes you have an absolute mental breakdown. Very differently, the massive dragon gods from Fairy Tail are absolutely terrifying beasts, each of whom are said to rival the power of the series' final villain, Acnologia. I don't know why I said it that way. The largest of these is actually Aldoron, known as the Wood Dragon God, because of his big wood. Oh, that's not what, okay, that's not it. Okay, never mind. And his size is so large that Fairy Tail's largest city, Giltina, can easily fit in the palms of his hands. Aldoron has the power to command life itself with the ability to drain nutrients from other living beings. Wait, what's that sound? Is that a rumbling I hear? Because the next monster doesn't drain nutrients from its victims, it just stomps on them. Here we got the Founding Titan, which is Eren Yeager's final monumental, creepy, weird form that commands other titans and unleashes hundreds of colossal titans on their genocidal march across the entire globe, known as the Rumbling, and they even made a song about it. How nice is that? Oh, wow, I mean, he eliminated like 80% of humanity and he's still not even close to being the biggest beast on this list. I mean, just for example, what about the biggest Pokemon of all time, Eternamax Eternatus? Because yeah, he's even bigger than Wailord by like surprisingly a lot. The Pokemon of the Galar region can tap into special transformations called Dynamaxing that basically dramatically increases their size to this truly gargantuan proportion. But Eternatus here doesn't Dynamax, he doesn't even Gigantamax, he Eternamaxes to a size of easily over 100 meters tall, making him absolutely huge. But not as huge as the biggest known character in the One Piece world. Much like the Spirit Tortoise from earlier, Zunisha, the giant elephant, houses the entire civilization of Zou upon its own back. And let me tell you, it's not only very big, though Oda did recently nerf it down from like 35 kilometers to only 5 to 6 kilometers tall. But this guy is also pretty old as well. It's been walking through One Piece's oceans for hundreds of years at this point as punishment for some crime that it's committed during the Void Century. And so with the updated numbers, I guess now One Piece fans are just gonna have to break out the measuring stick because we're just not really sure how big this elephant actually is. But speaking of Zunisha, also the perpetrators of crimes against humanity are the Gauna from Knights of Sidonia. Now, these terrifying eldritch space beasts are incomprehensible and unknowable. They are just non-communicative. Basically, they show no signs of recognizable intelligence. Only one thing about them is certain: they want to destroy humans really badly. I mean, they already destroyed the entire Earth 1,000 years ago, and now the remaining humans in Knights of Sidonia are just trying their best to escape their reach as they find a new planet to inhabit. And actually, speaking of monsters that kill humanity en masse, what about the Gun Devil from Chainsaw Man? Now, I gotta admit, he's not as big as some of the other monsters so far, but that doesn't make him any less terrifying, let me tell you that. The Devils of Chainsaw Man are formed from their fear and anxiety that humans have around a certain concept. And so basically, all of the fear caused by gun violence in the world gave birth to the Gun Devil. And when this guy appears in Japan, 57,912 people died in a matter of 26 seconds. Within 5 minutes, it had a death toll of 1.2 million people all around the globe, making it one of the most deadly devils in the entire series. Okay, but now I'm getting a little bit excited because this next supermassive mega monster is probably the biggest of all, at least if online anime math can prevail at all. God from One Punch Man is the overarching antagonist of the Monster Association arc and influences many villains from the shadows by granting them greater power or manipulating their ambition. Now, he usually appears as a swirling mass of energy, almost resembling the surface of the planet Jupiter, but one panel shows him standing on the moon itself, and this guy is huge. Okay, keeping with real-world moon proportions would mean that he's roughly 3,000 kilometers tall in this image, and I just don't think we can get much bigger than that, but we luckily can get much more powerful. I mean, because come on, you gotta admit, if there's one thing that's way more cool than a giant monster, it's a really powerful tiny monster. I don't know if you can relate to this, but somehow it's even scarier when a short king can destroy a continent with a flick of his finger instead of a massive dragon monster swiping it away. Because you see, what I found in my research is that the strength of anime monsters doesn't just just keep growing and growing the bigger they get, because at a certain point on the graph, it's much more like a bell curve with characters becoming smaller again, but even more powerful. Small powerful, if you want. Anyways, another one of the great mob beasts created by the Witch of Gluttony, the Great Rabbit from ReZero, is an absolutely terrifying example of this. Now, on the surface, it just looks like a bunch of Snow White bunny rabbits, but these bunnies have a real taste for blood, and they will devour anything and everything that's in their path. They're absolutely fearsome opponents that can multiply indefinitely as you kill them, making them pretty much impossible to defeat. Now, of course, thanks to some cunning tricks and some extremely powerful magic, the ReZero heroes are able to somehow prevail. I mean, it kind of helps when you get infinite lives and keep trying things over and over. That makes things easier. But up next, we have the disaster curses from Jujutsu Kaisen. And with everything that has happened in the story so far, it's kind of easy to forget just how strong Jogo, Hanami, and Dagon and Mahito really are, since they get clowned on by other characters like Sukuna. However, just like in Chainsaw Man, JJK's curses are born out of humanity's fear of various concepts, and this group of special great curses are created by humanity's fears of natural disasters, and in Mahito's case, humans' fear of each other. In other words, they are some of the strongest curses in existence and managed to take out their fair share of main characters during the Shibuya incident. That's just a shame that they had people like Gojo and Kenjaku to deal with as well. And our next set of iconic, smaller but very powerful anime monsters are the Homunculi from Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist. I really want to watch the anime again now. Missed that. Anyways, basically each of these artificially created humanoids is near impossible to kill. Since they have a Philosopher's Stone embedded inside of them, they can continually regenerate until all of the immense energy in that stone has actually been used up. But a little trick, the most effective way to kill one, it seems to be setting it on fire over and over and over again. So thanks for figuring that one out, and thanks for your service, Roy Mustang. Also, I didn't have room to squeeze in all 1025 Pokemon on this list, but surely I have room for at least one more. Mewtwo here is one of the most all-time iconic pocket monsters in existence, because this lab experiment created to replicate the powers of Mew has stats that are just absolutely off the charts, second only to the god of Pokemon himself, Arceus. And this psychic type has incredible power that made him a fitting star for the first Pokemon movie, and then even more Pokemon movies after that. And even though in that first movie Pikachu had to cry to resurrect Ash, he didn't cry nearly as much as the next entry, Devilman from Devilman Crybaby. Okay. When the teenager Akira Fudo gains the power of the Devil Amon, he becomes the monstrous Devilman. And using his newfound abilities, he fights against the demon race, who are hell-bent on, yes, once again, destroying all of humanity. Have not seen that concept at all today. But anyways, his power is even strong enough to fight against Satan himself, who's also his best friend. I mean, listen, it's kind of hard to explain this show. Just check this thing out. It's only like 10 episodes long, but you won't regret watching it. Mostly? Okay, you will probably kind of regret watching it a lot, but it is really good. Promise. But that's actually not the only demon in the small powerful category, because up next there is the main villain of Demon Slayer, Muzan Kibutsuji. I nailed the last name on the first try, and it surprised me so much that I stopped talking. That is hilarious. Don't let the fact that he's a Michael Jackson lookalike fool you. This guy is not to be messed with. As the first demon ever, he's responsible for converting all of the demons in the series from regular humans to bloodthirsty monsters, as he seeks to conquer his one weakness, which is the sun. And while Muzan is cold and callous, lacking all types of empathy, the next monster is a lot more sympathetic. Meruem from Hunter x Hunter, who is the king of the earlier discussed Chimera ants. And his power is so incredible that the world's strongest hunter, Isaac Netero, couldn't even leave a scratch on him. It actually took a literal nuke to finally take out this guy, who at the ripe age of 40 days, was one of the strongest beings in the Hunter x Hunter world and a pretty solid strategy game player as well on top of that. No joke, this guy could probably beat someone like Magnus Carlsen pretty easily, I think. And after Meruem, here's the character that his design was very heavily inspired by: Cell from Dragon Ball. He is the ultimate creation of Dr. Gero from the Red Ribbon Army. Incorporating the genetic code from the world's strongest fighters, he was constructed to be the perfect warrior. He even has the ability to absorb the power of his victims through his tail, allowing him to evolve through a series of forms until he became Perfect Cell, which took all of the Sea Fighter's strength together in order to defeat. And actually, let's just do 2 Dragon Ball characters in a row here, because I can't leave out an even stronger Dragon Ball villain, of course, Majin Buu. Now, Buu is a demonic entity that was summoned by the wizard BBD, which is an hilarious name by the way, in order to try to conquer the universe. Like Cell, Buu also has the ability to absorb his opponents, taking on their physical features, personality traits, and pretty much most of their power as well. However, Dragon Ball Z's final battle is actually against Kid Buu, a menacing and childish form of him that completely lacks sanity and is just insanely broken and powerful. From a different universe, but also insanely powerful, is the strongest class of Hollows from Bleach, the Vasto Lord. Vasto Lordi? Ooh. Now, the Menos Grande I talked about earlier are really big, but the Vasto Lord here trade sheer size for raw power and instead have tremendous amounts of strength housed in a human-sized body. Even more powerful than a Vasto Lord though are the Arankar, which are created when a Hollow removes its mask and gains the power of a Shinigami. The Espada, including characters like Grimjo and Ulquiorra, are the strongest 10 Hollows led by Aizen, and most of them were Vasto Lordi class Hollows before ascending to their ultimate form. And hey, even Ichigo, who just has everyone's power somehow, gets a terrifying Vasto Lord form as well with his Hollow transformation later too. Shaltir Bloodfallen from Overlord is one of the series' strongest floor guardians. Don't let her flirtatious attitude fool you, because her power is actually on a whole different level. Her long list of magical spells and regenerative powers make her an opponent that's able to fight on even footing with the absolutely broken Ainz Ul Gol. And actually, yet another character that I think is misleadingly cute is QB from Madoka Magica, because while in any other anime I think QB would just be the adorable mascot character, and while not physically strong itself, QB's real powers come from their ability to manipulate the events of the entire Madoka Magica series itself. Its ability to grant wishes can bestow incredible power upon the magical girls in the series, and even if QB is killed, another replicate of itself will appear, consuming the old body and assuming QB's old role. But next, for a little bit of a deep cut, let's head over to Elfen Lied, which, oh my god, I don't think I've talked about this on the channel so far at all. A show with like the coldest first 5 minutes of all time. The anti-hero of the series is known as Lucy, a member of the Declonius race, a newly evolved species that surpassed humans due to their powerful psychic abilities. Now these guys, they're able to summon vectors, which are invisible arms that can inflict maximum violence on those that surround them. However, Luffy's vectors are so powerful that if she lost control, she could destroy the entire world. Who is this? Oh yeah, Garo, who is the chief rival of Saitama in One Punch Man. Despite being trained as a martial arts master by an S-class hero, his fascination with monsters led him to fashion himself as a human monster. And once he gained the power of God, who I discussed earlier, it made for an epic battle against Saitama on a truly galactic scale. Of course, unsurprisingly, this power-up was still not quite enough to defeat the truly unstoppable hero. Meanwhile, the next entry on this list can kill just about anyone like this. The Shinigami from Death Note, primarily Ryuk, are the owners of the Death Notes themselves. In case you forgot, because it's been a while since the show came out, it was basically out of sheer boredom that Ryuk even dropped the Death Note to Earth, where it came into the possession of Light Yagami. Being literal gods of death, Shinigami's abilities are just absolutely broken, since, you know, they can just kill anyone that they want. But now coming to us from Yu Yu Hakusho, the series that made Togashi famous before he wrote Hunter x Hunter, are the three kings that rule over the demon world. In the final saga of Yu Yu Hakusho, these characters, Raizen, Yomi, and Mukuro, have an all-out war, aka a tournament arc, of course, for control over the demon realm. And through circumstances, I guess, this brings the main characters into conflict as well, since Kurama and Hiei have old ties to Yomi and Mukuro, and Raizen is, surprise, actually Yusuke's dad. But now, I told you at the beginning of the video that you hadn't heard the last of slimes. And yes, that means just one thing. Rimuru Tempesto, the star of the Isekai, that time I got reincarnated as a slime, he's just really crazy powerful, and I love him, and I talk about him on his channel quite a lot. Now, using his abilities to absorb his opponent's powers, he gains insanely broken abilities over the course of the show. With access to skills like spatial and time manipulation, it's a real surprise that Rimuru needs pretty much anything else, but he has a lot more. And yet somehow possibly even more powerful than all of Rimuru's broken abilities are the God Hand from Berserk. Now these 5 demonic entities inhabit another plane of existence entirely, being less like living things and more like embodiments of evil itself. Each of its members, including the series' ultimate villain Griffith, possess abilities that alter reality itself, being truly godlike in their level of power. Also, if you ask me, Griffith is also godlike in his capacity to be like the absolute worst, but are these 5 horrors the actual strongest monsters in all of anime, or do you think that somebody else should actually hold that title? But while reality bending abilities are pretty sick, what about just raw, pure strength? Because without using any tricks or special powers, who's actually the physically strongest anime character out of all? Well, luckily, I already covered that exact topic in my comparison of all the strongest anime characters, which you can watch right here. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I will hopefully see you in that next one.